First of all, I just wanted to thank you that you gave us such a great cult horror movie line. And I have two tiny questions to you. The first one is, if you had to choose, what is your most loved nightmare movie? And second, if you had to choose, what is your most loved Freddy glove?
Most loved nightmare movie and most loved glove.
Well, I know that the hardcore fans can delineate not only the gloves, but the makeup better than I can. And you can understand that they tend to blend a little bit and mesh together with me. I'm a huge fan of Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Part 7. We made that movie for you guys. That is Wes Craven's Valentine to all the fans. But he's also examining the morality of getting rich off of a story about evil. And his question is, what if evil got pissed off and manifested itself, the evil that he was exploiting in his stories about Freddy Krueger? What if that came back to haunt us, the actors and the director and the producer? So it's very meta, as they say. But I like my acting, I think, in Part 4 the best, the Rennie Harlan film. I think the fan favorite, if you took a vote or a poll, would be Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. I think maybe we jumped the shark a little bit, as they say in Hollywood, with Part 6. But I still think you could remake Part 6 using cultural icons, popular culture icons of today, or whenever you make it, and of course, you can remake some of the films, you can, instead of Freddy having a phone with a tongue coming out of it, it could come out of your cell phone. There's not that big of a stretch if they're going to remake some of them. I think Part 2 could be standalone, and I think Part 6 is standalone. But it would be nice to do 3 and 4, because they kind of blend together the casts, and then 5, and then maybe go on and do a kind of standalone 6 or a standalone 2. Our culture is much more open now and accepting of different types of people. And so I think it would be real interesting to remake Part 2, given how open society is now. I think there would be some interesting stuff to play around with in that, dealing with people that are closeted and don't know it, things like that. But for me, my favorite is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. God rest his soul.
Thank you so much. And we do have time for one last question from
the last question.
So make it good, sir. Okay? No pressure. Go ahead.
Hi, Robert. I would like to know, when you make the decision to get into the horror movies, when we see before, like in V, you play Willy, or Margie in A Star Is Born, or you also make the trailer from Schwarzenegger and then you get into this genre of horror. I would like to know, in your private life, you're also a little bit more fascinated, or how is it with you?
Okay, so when you choose to play in horror, did anything in your private life change? Did you get more fascinated by horror movies?
No, you know what happened? I told you earlier, I was kind of this theater snob, and Wes taught me to respect the genre, the horror genre. And what happened is I remembered as a child loving horror movies and saving up my money from mowing the lawn, and with my allowance that I got. And my friends and I would try to talk somebody's mother into driving us to the Saturday matinee, and we would go see these great Hammer films and horror films. And I remember doing that and how much I love that, and how much I love that the imagination in that world, and the thrills and the scares, and I literally, since that moment happened with Wes, I have these new memories all the time of films that meant a lot to me. I was remembering a film about 2 or 3 years ago that I loved as a child called Them, about the giant ants. And it had great special effects. I think it was nominated for an Oscar, but it also has great sound effects. So I'm still having those kind of flashbacks to my childhood and all those horror films that meant a lot to me. In the middle 50s, we'd have sleepovers at our friends' houses, and sometimes we would sneak into the TV room and watch shows really late at night, you know, when mom and dad were asleep. And we would see, and in those days, movies like King Kong and movies like Frankenstein were uncut because they had to fill a larger block of time on the late night, late show. And so Frankenstein uncut. She loves me not with the flower. She loves me not with the flower. And when he runs out of flower petals, he does it with the little girl, and he throws her in the lake. You know, and it's like an incredible scene if you haven't seen it, because it's been removed, because apparently we can't handle the truth, you know, Frankenstein. But even in King Kong, there's some kind of nasty stuff that they cut out. But when I was a child, it was still in the movie on TV. Now it was 11:30 at night, but it was still on. So I had all of these flashbacks after I signed up for the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and I realized just how much horror meant to me. My godfather was a top salesman for the big publishing company, Simon & Schuster. And there was a coffee table book called The Movies at his house, that thick. And there was a whole section on the classic age, the golden age of horror, the 1930s and before. And great photos of the daughters of Dracula in their diaphanous gowns, pre-censorship code, Hollywood. You know, you can kind of see underneath the nightgown of those daughters of Dracula. But there was a whole page of postage stamp size images of Lon Chaney in all his different makeups. And I was obsessed with this 2-page fold-out in this giant copy book. And one of the photos is Lon Chaney, and he's taken a boiled egg, and he's taken the shell off. He removes the placenta on the egg, and he puts it in his eye and over his eyeball, like a contact lens, to make himself look milky in one eye, like one eye is blinded. Just amazing, probably the first contact lens. But we know the stories about him stretching his nostrils for Phantom of the Opera and all that. But every one of those images was different, and I was obsessed with it. And here, you know, 70 years later, I'm still putting on makeup, you know, after all those years. And yet there was that pause, there was that break when I was doing Shakespeare. And I didn't think about that, or I didn't attend horror movies anymore. But I also, even then, I was a little bit fascinated with makeup, with the beards and the mustaches and the eyebrows and a dueling scar when I played Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet. So I still had that fascination that must have dated back to little Robert Englund, age 8, looking at his godfather's coffee table book about the movies and looking at pictures of all the different makeups that Lon Chaney had created for himself. And that must have been in the back of my brain when I said yes to Wes Craven that day in 1983.
Thank you so much. Imagine that one coffee book table gave us you. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you.
Sad news is this is the whole time that we have for you here on the stage.
Well, I can talk to you guys all day because I can tell when I mention some obscure actor that you guys are all with me, and you know what I'm talking about because you guys are all fans. I'm a fanboy too, and hey everybody, happy holidays.